Hello again, everyone. Ambassador Terry here with number two of a series that we're talking about speakers and some things to think about along the way. And this time I have my close friend and colleague to talk about inspiration, audience inspiration. Mike Stevenson. Mike, we're going to have fun.
Absolutely, and I'm delighted to see you again, Terry. Looking so well.
Thank you,
So
sir.
you.
And so do you, my friend. So do you.
Thank
So we're
thank
talking
you.
about audience.
Yeah.
How do you get them incited? Well, we're both pro speakers, international speakers. So, the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, you probably think about is somebody hopping up on a stage and just making a place go crazy. Mike, some of the things that you do when you're preparing to step up for a big motivational speech.
Well, strangely enough, I'm not one of these hyperactive people that goes for a crazy, crazy beginning, because it's all downhill from there. If that's how you
Mhm.
start off, it's all downhill. So I draw a lot of what I do from when I used to stand on stage as a singer, guitarist. So you start off in a song that you know people are going to like, and then you finish with a crescendo. But so I will start with a story, no introductions, nothing else. I'll go straight into a story, and people are hushed listening to the story. And it's actually far more engaging than if you start, because some people will go, oh, Jesus, another hyper, hyperactive stage performer telling us to G up. So I start with a story, and then I move into a bit of humor. So you get this engagement, then you get a laugh. And it's really all about pacing it. And so as a musician, I used to order my songs in a way that took people on the kind of roller coaster journey. So I do that when I speak. So I tell a lot of stories. I use a lot of humor. I vary the tone of my voice, and I do interactivity as well. So at the very least, I ask rhetorical questions, you know, and that engages people. That you're not expecting them to individually answer, although sometimes I will say, you know, if I ask you a question and yes is very far to the right and no is very far to the left, where should I be standing? And people say left a bit, right a bit, left a bit, right a bit. Do you know what I mean? So you engage them in something that's quasi-physical. I
Mhm.
don't want people jumping up and down and raising their hands, but it is all in the words you use as well. And I have no introduction other than the story I tell to begin with. Because I don't say, hi, I'm Mike Stevenson, because I've been introduced as Mike Stevenson, and that's repetition. I'll never say things like, I don't want to keep you too long. I know this is approaching your lunchtime and you're all starving and you probably want to see me off stage. I've seen people doing that. So you're immediately telling people to be guarded of you as a speaker. I establish credibility in the first few minutes with a story that I know is going to blow people's minds. Then I move into a bit of humor. And the moments after you use humor, people absorb and they're listening even more intently. It's a fact, it's been scientifically proven. So if you tell something that's funny, and humor for me is always self-deprecating, never about other people. It's got to be appropriate. So it's always self-deprecating. A story about myself where something's gone catastrophically wrong or I've made an idiot of myself, that sort of thing. So that's the beginning. And I think when you engage people and you've got them to some extent eating out of your hands, that sounds a bit patronizing, but they are listening to every word because they don't know what's going to come next. So I love the element of surprise. I don't use notes. So I'm always looking at the audience because if I try and use notes, I get mixed up. I get caught up in what the next word is going to be. And I get mixed up. So I stutter a bit. So I had to abandon that. In any case, if I'm looking at the audience, I can't see my notes. If I'm looking at my notes, I can't see the audience. So I'd have to have, glasses on and off. So that is how I start. It's really just building people up, getting them engaged so you know they're listening to every word, and then throwing in a few surprises. You know, a few. I see it as theatre. You know how a great play or a great um, piece of drama, a film, it takes you on a journey. And the end is the kind of, wow, what did I learn from that? What am I going to take from that? How do I feel now? People always feel something when they leave a cinema. Sometimes it's, what the hell have I watched? That was Barbie for me, to be honest. Um, and sometimes you're really moved. You're thinking, my God, this is something that it has shown me an angle on something that I knew existed, but I've never had this depth. I've never had this human story told to me so compellingly. So really, that's what I do to set out. And I love the element of surprise because I do see it as a bit of theatre.
Yes, yes.
Does
Very
that make
good.
sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Ladies and gentlemen, do you agree? So, what else do we think about? You know, who we talking to? We've Maria Papacosta and I
Oh,
talked
yeah,
about talking to people ahead of the
yeah,
of your time to talk. Check in early, if nothing else. If not,
yeah,
be there from the very beginning so that you get a pace for what was going on the stage before you got there. You've talked to people, you know what they're thinking, you know what the company's thinking. You've had a few minutes more
yeah.
than just talking to the person who's got miking you up to walk you out on the stage. And you have a knowledge and a feel for the room. There's chemistry there, and there's a movement of energy in the air. What do you
Yeah,
want to do with that energy in the air?
yeah.
Okay, do you want to keep it going, or do you want to kind of let it come down while you're speaking to them, or do you want to really raise it up? Because
Well,
that's what you're there for. And you have some experience along that line where you're adjusting where the energy is in the
yeah,
conference, for instance.
yeah,
Can you talk about that a little bit? I think that's a really good
yeah.
point.
I mean, one of the things I do is I always try and talk to members of the audience before I'm on stage. I go around and standing with a coffee with them, and I just get a sense. So sometimes you can bring an audience member in to your presentation if they agree. I remember once I was talking to a company, and this was about language and how people represent themselves when they meet someone. They say, I'm an audio engineer, and that's it, right? And I was trying to say, you've got to think more about what the impact of what you do is on the organization. So I was talking to people. I said to this young lassie is the Scottish version, and I said, "What's your job?" And she says, "I'm just an admin." And I said, "Okay, I want a wee word with you for a moment." And I said, "So we agreed something." And about halfway through my presentation, I said, "Sarah, where are you?" And this lassie jumps up. And I said, "What's your role in the organization?" She said, "I'm the engine oil of this organization." And it just changed the whole tempo in the room because she'd said something, she got a loud cheer for it because it was quite a profound statement. She wasn't just an admin. She wasn't just a shy girl who thought that everyone sort of put upon her because she had a lowlier position than they do. So that's a very good way of changing the energy. And I see myself as a kind of um, temperature controller. You have
Mhm.
got control. You're up on stage. People want you to have control. People want you to be taken on this journey. Sometimes you can slow it down and you can tell a sad story, you know, and that makes people think. And then you leap into something else that's an uplift. So it really is a up and down story. And I use lots of stories. I mean, stories make audiences really listen, but they also make them remember. See, people remember a story and they remember what they felt about that story. If you tell them facts and figures, they won't remember it. It's just, unless you say something like, the UN budget is 700 times less a year than what we spend on weapons. In other words, we spend 700 times more on weapons than we do in peace. People remember that because you've taken a piece of information, you've done your research, and you've found something out. And people remember that because it's been wrapped in something that people will remember, this comparison thing, And it's a shocking figure. It's true, but it's a shocking figure. And that, resonates with people, particularly now when the world really is in a backspin at the moment. And, I feel I've got a responsibility now to lift the mood, to research the audience I'm going to be speaking to, and research the environment so I can come with ideas. My energy comes with ideas. So I say, this is what I would be looking at if I was in your position. And then you give an example of where it's been done elsewhere. And then people are kind of, yeah, that's a really good idea. I don't tell them bad ideas because then they'll say, that's a shit idea. I tell them good ideas. And it's sometimes they're just so left of field and people are amazed and they think, wow, yeah, yes, never thought that way before. That's when you've got them getting inspired, right? And I love introducing those ideas and telling stories about how those ideas have been enacted somewhere else. It could be the South Pacific, it could be America, it could be Iceland. I mean, always look to Scandinavian countries if you want good ideas. That's my rule of thumb. But also look at places like Malaysia, Indonesia. Indonesia is going to be one of the top 5 economies in the world by 2050. People haven't even seen them coming. It's a huge growth economy. Brazil is going to be one of the top 5 economies in the world by 2050. The world is changing and it's giving people a sense that nothing stands still. Because the thing that upsets most people is this sense that the world will never change. What's the point? What's the point of speaking up about my job when I know I'm just going to be, ignored? And you say, no, you're not ignored. What usually happens is you're not coming up with ideas, you're making complaints. And you whisper with your colleagues in corridors. But none of that ever reaches a CEO who is dying to hear what you think and what your ideas are. Unless they're a really stupid CEO, and there are probably quite a few around, but you want to listen.
Some with blinders on, you may say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, oh,
I'm still here.
all right, okay. Can you see me all right?
Yes, I can see you just fine, sir. We're doing good. You had some great points there, and I just wanted to interject. I'm recognized top 10 thought leader on the internet right now, and a lot of that is because people will come to me and they'll engage me in conversation. Sometimes they engage me financially, and sometimes we're just talking. And my mind's always working on stuff. Everything is twisting around in there, and one of the things I like doing, particularly if I'm talking before a company or a corporation, where when I was talking to the people beforehand, I found out some areas that they're struggling in that I have some possible ideas for. So what I'll do is during that course of that presentation, I'll say, for example, this industry. So one corporation could be struggling with what I found out, and they might be able to incorporate this or this, or look for an M&A opportunity in this industry because it's doing rather well right now,
Yeah.
um, and it's ripe for breaking apart. Okay,
Yes,
some
absolutely.
companies are starting to falter because they've expanded to a point where they can't keep control of their revenue streams. However, if you're out there looking, perhaps something that create a revenue stream for you could be XYZ in
Absolutely.
another company, in another industry, which it broadens the diversification. And you're
Absolutely.
teaching everybody in the room, hey, this is a great idea for XYZ company, people. Write this down, right? Those who are smart enough do write it down. Ooh,
Absolutely.
that's a hell of an idea. And the leadership will come up to you later on and go, that was a really great idea. And I says, I'm glad
Absolutely.
because you were XYZ company, you know.
Yeah.
I also do consulting.
Yeah.
But those are things
Well,
that a lot of people don't think of. For instance, Maria and I were talking about an event that I was at, a summit where it was a lot of speakers.
yeah.
And some of the speakers walked in a few minutes before they were mic up and step out on the stage. They had no idea of the people. They had no idea of what was going on in there. They put on a canned presentation, stepped off the stage, expecting everybody in the room to buy their brand new book. Well, nobody
Yeah.
knows who they are. They address things
Exactly.
that was good from the book, maybe, but it has nothing to do with the audience, and they can't figure out why they can't sell any books. There's more to speaking than standing up and shooting your mouth off, so to speak. Okay,
Absolutely.
and you and I have talked about that. When
Yeah.
we did our live on Audacity. As a matter of fact, I think that's your word for the year is being using the word audacity. And
Oh, indeed.
we've had some great conversations on that. What's your take on that now? You've been speaking lately.
Well, I have, yeah, and I've got a few coming up in the near future, a few conferences where I know I've got a really big responsibility to try and shift the energy and try and get people to focus on a different level. And I've got ideas. So I know I'm going to bring those ideas. But it is a huge responsibility. And I've been doing so much research. I know the audience sectors because there aren't many audience sectors I don't know because I've worked in so many of them. So, I bring that empathy and understanding. And also, I've worked at every level in so many organizations that I can talk to the guy who's, at the lower end of the leadership spectrum. I can talk to the CEO and I can talk to the middle managers. So I do understand the language they use. So I'll say, I know what it's like. You wake up in the morning and life seems to be a bit on repeat, and you get into work and you go to do your job and you keep your head down. And that's what a lot of people do because they mistakenly think they're keeping your head down and just getting on with the job is going to keep them out of view, and that they can't make mistakes
Mhm.
because if you make a mistake, you're going to get noticed. And I've heard people say that to people, well, CEOs never talk to you, but that means you've never made a mistake. You think, wow. So I talk to people at where they're at. So I've experienced many of the emotions. You can actually talk about those emotions. I can also say, look, when you come to work, when you go to work tomorrow, don't leave your personality in the coat hook. Take it all into work. You're a funny guy, you're a funny woman. Be funny at work. Don't just leave it to the pub after you've been at work during the day. So you want people to bring their personality to work. You're an ideas person. Keep coming up with ideas. You're a storyteller. Tell stories. And I don't know if this is true. I think it's probably different in the States, but in Scotland, people are very reluctant to put their head above the parapet. It's this, what they call in Australia, tall poppy syndrome. So you've got to say to people, be tall poppies. It doesn't mean that you can't be a tall poppy. It means that you don't go just over that edge where Scots will say, oh, you've got above yourself. You've gone too far. Keep your humility. But humility and keeping your head down is not the same thing. Some of the most fantastic leaders the world has ever known have had humility at their very core, like Gandhi. Look at the impact he made. He wasn't a ranting kind of speaker. Martin Luther King was. Two entirely different styles. So, when you're trying to get into people's minds, you have to embrace the fact they're all different. They might work in the same industry. Some are men, some are women, some are transgender. You have to embrace everyone. And so you try and talk to each different kind of person. Does that make sense? So the way you tell stories, the way you talk about the stage you were at in your life when something happened. I was 22 and this happened, made a huge difference to my life. Or, I met someone that gave me this piece of advice, and what a difference it made to me. Just listening and enacting what that person's advice was, because that's what this is about. I've got experience, I've got knowledge, but you've got experience and you've got knowledge. So the thing is, I value my experience and knowledge, and I hope you do as well. But you've got to value yourself in the way that I value myself. And, we can roll on and things like that, but it's all about having this kind of conversation with people. I mean, I think a great speech is a conversation. I think great theatre is a conversation. It's just that the audience isn't actually speaking. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. When you're up on stage, ladies and gentlemen, you're helping somebody. You're sending a message to somebody who needs to hear the message. It could be one person in the middle of the crowd. It could be somebody at the back of the room. It could be somebody right in front of you, or it could be most of the room needs and is looking for your message, because the people who hired you to come and do the speech already give you an idea about what's going on within the company, and it's no different than Mike and I having a conversation, and Mike needs some help with something, and I kind of pick it up on my radar, and I just ask, you okay? Looks like you're struggling with this area. I haven't talked on stage for a long time. What's going on? Or maybe it's you just don't have that punch of Mike Stevenson or Terry Nichols. What is that?
Yeah,
Well, it's this, ladies and gentlemen. That's your job up on stage. You're a teacher. You're a storyteller.
yeah,
Okay. Very few companies or organizations are going to hire you for your knowledge of data. Very few, if any. Okay. They're going to look at you in this age of social media. When Mike and I first started talking on the stage, we didn't have all this good stuff. All right. It was go out and knock on doors and make the phone calls. That's how
yeah,
you got to speak. And so now you have a luxury. You have the ability to look at the website of the organization who hired you. Okay. What is the history of the summit that you're going to? Is it the first one?
yeah,
Okay. What's the theme? Does the theme work for you? What are some of the people that that may have stories along that line that you could talk about without identifying them in the
absolutely.
course of your presentation? So you become real. You're not this stick up there with a shooting mouth pulling stuff off. It's very important, Mike.
Actually, that's a very, very good point. You're one human being with vulnerabilities, talking to other human beings with vulnerabilities. And it's quite good, you know, to demonstrate that you're authentic and vulnerable just like they are. And you can do it by making a mistake and saying, oh, well, I'm only human. I bleed just like you. But I was going to tell a story about one opening I saw. It wasn't to a big theatre. It was a group of tenants whose homes were riddled with dampness. And they wanted to bring this home to the leaders of the Metropolitan Authority, the council here. And they arrived, and the officials and the councillors were looking a bit nervous because the one thing that frightens them most is a ranting tenant. And this rather large woman came in, and she looked quite fierce. And you could see the trepidation of those waiting for her to start speaking. All she did was take a packet of Scott's porridge oats out of this plastic bag and pour it onto this oak table, and a big green lump came out. It had all solidified. And she said, that's what my children woke up to this morning. That's all she said. And it was the most incredible thing I've seen. And I thought, how? I've never done anything as good as that. And here she was, and she had them absolutely captivated from that moment on. And then she said, so what are we going to do about it? So it wasn't even what are you going to do about it? It's what are we going to do about it? And you see how the dynamic changes from their expectation of someone ranting at them, complaining, shouting loudly, banging their fist on the table. None of that. It was a simple gesture and a brilliant one because it just spoke to this problem they have and how it affected her children each morning. Brilliant. As a starter, as an engagement tool, I've never seen anything better than that because it was so quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. And I just thought that was utter genius. And of course, the conversation then rolled on, but they couldn't argue with her because the lived experience was there. Do you know what I mean? She could have taken photographs, but she brought living evidence of the problem into this room, and she poured it onto an oak table. And it was just a brilliant piece of theatre. And it just started a different conversation. No one was being defensive anymore.
Yeah.
And I find
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope gave you some more ideas today. There's a lot of different ways to incite an audience in the proper way. And Mike, thanks for doing this with me. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for, we're going to be watching for comments. So please leave your comments. We'll certainly engage you. And thanks for coming. Bye for now.